Because it is my guilt, I claim you, grievous miracle. Make my chest hurt with regret. Forge your punishment and nail it deep. Shape my guilt once again.
Blasphemous is a game I noticed one day while mindlessly scrolling through Steam, as one does out of boredom. It instantly caught my attention, and I proceeded to add it to my wishlist, where it would sit for a few months before I decided to pick it up. Instantly after booting this game up, I was hooked. I've tried playing games like Hollow Knight, but couldn't really get into it, so this was my first Metroidvania I've fully played, and I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, but I'm so glad I decided to give it a shot. The game was created by the Game Kitchen, a small Spanish development team that's only worked on about 5 games, with 2 of them being Blasphemous. Everybody on this team was super passionate, with one guy stating during a documentary of the game's development that he had used up all his luck getting to work on the game, and another man stating working on the video game has been a dream come true for him. This kind of passion towards game creation is something that is severely lacking in most new AAA releases. With games like Modern Warfare basically shitting on its customers once a year, it's pretty fair to say that a lot of studios only have money in mind and don't really try to create something that they truly care about. The passion that the Game Kitchen has for creating a good game is evident in Blasphemous. Whether it was the backgrounds, the soundtrack, cutscenes, or even just the gameplay itself, all of this game just feels like a work of art. The biggest inspiration for this game was Spanish Catholicism, and the main theme of this game is penance, or the repentance for sins you have committed. A huge part of what inspired this game was just one painting done by Francisco de Goya called A Procession of Flagellants? Anyways, this painting depicts a group of people dressed similarly to the main protagonist, whipping their backs in penitence. I knew next to nothing about Spanish Catholicism before playing this game, but the imagery and religious references in this game massively piqued my interest. Although an understanding of this inspiration is not necessary for enjoying the game, learning things like the meaning of your character's costume design, to seeing more obvious references such as baptism in the beginning and the statue of someone being crucified, very similarly to Jesus Christ, engaged me into the world much further after researching where the inspirations came from. The story for Blasphemous is laid out very similarly to the Souls games, with you knowing next to nothing outside of hints from the main game. However, if you take time to read items picked up, you can discover a lot more depth into what's actually going on. The character you play as is referred to as the Penitent One. The Penitent One dons a large pointy helmet with a thorny crown on its design, referencing the crown Jesus wore during his crucifixion. He belongs to the Brotherhood of Silent Sorrows and is the only one who remains. After Escobar realized they had a purpose that opposed him, he had an entire brotherhood excommunicated and massacred. The Penitent One's main mission is to end the world of its great suffering, so he works towards the Cradle of Affliction in hopes of doing so. The Penitent One wields the Mea Culpa, translating to "through my fault" in Latin, and wields this on his pilgrimage to end Custodia's suffering. And I know at this point, you probably have a lot of questions, like, what is the Church? What is the Cradle of Affliction? And who even is Escobar? To explain all of that, however, I should probably start from the beginning. The game is set in the world of Custodia, which is a place of extreme worship, and the citizens of this land worship a being known as the Miracle, a being which blesses and punishes these people in ways known to nobody except the Miracle. The first of these punishments came in the form of the Knot of 3 Words, also referred to as the First Miracle, when one day a young man prayed to be punished for his sins, and the Miracle acted by making a tree erupt from the log he was sitting on, transforming him into a twisted tree figure leaking gold from its bark. A sacred chalice was used to collect the gold and blood that poured from this tree, creating the Cradle of Affliction. Soon after this, a church was formed to worship this being, named the Mother of Mothers. This church was led by a man named Escobar, who acted as a sort of pope for the people of Custodia. One day, Escobar, believing the church had abandoned him and his people, renounced the Miracle, and he was severely punished for it. The miracle turned him into a large tree sitting on the very top of Custodia. This tree eventually caught on fire and led to a massive pile of ash in its wake. At the very top of this pile was the throne. Many people tried to climb this pile of ash to become the next Holy One to commune with the miracle, but all were consumed in the pile. A great wind would blow this ash through the lands of Custodia, and from it arose the punished, who had sunken into the ash, and they were determined to punish everyone who had escaped punishment from the divine will. Escobar would also arise from this ash, and guard his throne from those trying to commune with the miracle. In order to be forgiven for his blasphemy, 3 holy wounds were created for him to endure for all of time: attrition, contrition, and compunction. Guarding Escobar, who sits at the top of Custodia, is a bridge sealed by these 3 holy wounds. These wounds have been given to 3 of Custodia's most loyal saints, and you are unable to pass the bridge before proving yourself to them. After gathering all 3 holy wounds, you are still unable to reach the top, as an elevator there will not take you all the way. In order to get the elevator high enough to come face to face with Escobar, you need 3 masks. After finding the mask of Crescente, Orestes, and Dolphos, the penitent one is able to come face to face with Escobar. The game has 3 possible endings. The unworthy ending, where, after defeating Escobar, you transcend the mountain of ash, only to be consumed by it, never reaching the throne, as you are deemed unworthy of the communion with the miracle. The true believer ending in the game is unlocked by using a special item and dying 3 times to acquire the true weight of guilt. After unlocking this item, there are praying statues around the map that you can interact with to rid you of your guilt, and you must destroy them all and complete the dungeons afterwards. Doing this will grant you with the Thorn, a sword attachment that grows more and more after each dungeon. This attachment feeds on sin and guilt, and I have a theory for why that is, but I'll explain that later. After completing the game this way, when the penitent one climbs the mountain, he successfully transcends the ash, and sitting atop the throne, he kills himself with the mea culpa. His fate very similar to the Twisted One. He is worshipped for years and years before eventually someone comes to ruin it. My personal interpretation for these endings is that, due to the true weight of guilt being shared via the statues that can absolve you of it, the penitent one does not truly feel the weight of Custodia's sins resting on him alone. This is why, without destroying the statues, he is deemed unworthy. After destroying the statue, however, Custodia can rely on nobody else but the penitent one to absolve their guilt and save them. Taking on this immense burden, the penitent one truly recognizes his duty, thus becoming a true believer. The DLC ending of the game is probably the best one you can get though. After doing some NPC quest lines, at the very end you come face to face with the higher wills, the beings behind the miracle, and after you strike them down, you end their influence over Custodia, freeing the world from suffering. This ending is pretty cool because you know indefinitely that the higher wills will not be coming back. Unlike the true believer ending where, yeah, they stop suffering, but someone just takes a sword out and it's implied it starts all over again. The miracle is permanently destroyed and is completely unable to return again. I think that this story is amazing and one of the most memorable stories from a game I've played in recent memory. The game really immerses you into the world of Custodia with gorgeous background imagery, whether it be the snow-covered mountains or the cinematic shot on the top of the Mother's Church. I can really feel like I'm on a stoic journey throughout the game. The gameplay isn't anything too crazy, but it still feels satisfying. At its core, it's a Soulslike 2D platformer, and although it stays relatively the same throughout the game, there are a variety of spells you can cast using Favor, which is gained from dealing damage to enemies, and power-ups you can acquire via rosary beads, mea culpa hearts, or relics. These items can give you special buffs to certain stats when equipped, and can come in pretty handy for things like defense. The death in this game is also similar to the Souls-like genre in a few ways. It is punishing like in those games, where by dying, you have to go all the way back to where you died to collect your resources, but it's also more forgiving with this mechanic, since you don't lose any currency on death. Instead of your currency, you drop guilt fragments. These fragments also stack, meaning instead of dying again and losing everything, you can just go back to both places of death. However, you do want to collect these guilt fragments, since the more you have, the less money you gain from enemies and the less fervor you gain from attacks. And by finding special monuments, you're actually able to increase your fervor and health. The Lady of Six Sorrows will grant you more maximum health after finding her, and give you a badass cutscene. And then for Ver is just this, cup of lean, I guess. I don't really know what it is. If you want to increase the amount of damage your sword does and gain new abilities for attacking, you can also do that by discovering altars that grant your sword more powers instantly after discovering. There's also a parry system in this game that's pretty simple, but satisfying once learned. Basically, parrying an enemy allows you to get a special strike on them for a damage boost, but not everything can be parried. Some enemies, though, do require you to parry them, and if you can't do that, you can either A, put on the pussy stone that makes your parry window significantly longer, or B, just die, I guess. There are many enemies like this that force you to play a certain way when fighting them, so when you get into a room with a larger variety of enemies, it can be quite difficult trying to fight them. This factor, along with the platforming sometimes required while fighting, make the combat always feel engaging, and at times extremely difficult, even with relatively simple combat. My only real complaint with the gameplay is that major upgrades are pretty spread out, so it does take some time before you really start to feel more powerful, but after finding enough of the altars, it does feel insanely satisfying to one-shot the lesser enemies.
Now that's a lot of damage!
To summarize everything, Blasphemous is a great game that you should definitely check out when you get the chance. It's not perfect by any means, but with all of the thought-provoking imagery and references, I'll probably still think about this game years after playing it, which is something I can't say for a lot of games nowadays. Anyways, that pretty much sums up how I feel about Blasphemous. There is a second game, and if this video gets enough support, I'll consider making a video on that too. Anyways, with that being said, I've been working pretty hard on these videos, and seeing how much support Dark Souls and Ultra Kill got, I'll probably keep making more of these, and I already have a few planned out I'll be working on after this goes up. So if you like this video, I highly suggest you check out the other ones, the Dark Souls one and the Ultra Kill one. I love both those games, so making those was pretty fun, even if people got mad at me for calling Ultra Kill a Doom clone. But if you do check those videos out and you enjoy them, consider subscribing. I'm close to 100 and it would mean a lot.
Forever in name. I bless you forever in death.